Sword saints are the faithful patrons, preachers, and priests who worship the violent aspect of Makagagahum, Makabos, and pray to Gadalim, the intercessor of swords, to bring their woes to God. Makabos is the aspect of God who will arrive at the end of all things, he will cleanse it in a single blood tornado of steel and gnashing of teeth. Sword saints are given the Blade Commission, they must travel from settlement to teach the word and truth of the Ashen Star, the upcoming Edge eschatology, or as they call it, the Pagyubos, the emptying of the land. They are taught extensively the teachings of the sword, and their primary conviction is this: all things will be cut in the end by Makabos, we are the end. Those that follow the aspect of Makabos are also taught extensively the ways and arts of their God's violent and jealous aspect, which they say is the human state of their God, as all things have the binary states of man and nature. Through communion and following the 77 sword tenets of Gadalim, they sharpen their souls until they turn their very spirits into blades, sharper than any other soul. They will never find love, for those that try to embrace a sword soul will be bisected. Sword saints are seen as strangers and outsiders by the settlements. Those of Apambuket see them as bastards, mindless, idiots. That they have turned themselves into swords is stupid, for they have honed themselves to be swords that kill, not swords that cut. In essence, they are useless, and forever will be. The truth of all things is much more complicated, of course. The sword saint was once a different discipline, now rent in half, like the bisection that it truly is. Sword saints that practice the opposite philosophy exist in Bayi, born from the Blade Gospel's original form. The Blade Gospel was once simply the Blade Song, it has since been changed, now, once the Ashen Star priests took hold of it. Many of the original followers of the Blade Song created the blade weaving after splitting from them, while those that chose to become warriors for the new Ashen Star religion created the Blade Gospel. However, very recently, a larger portion of these martial artists have broken apart from the Ashen Star and have begun following a rural folk syncretism of Ashen Star teachings and the ancient religions of northern Rusunaga. These martial artists, in a fulmination of hard-headed defiance, keep both the name Sword Saint and Blade Gospel and teach in pagodas in Bayi as well as the communal feasts of Gadasan. They are revivalists of the original Blade Song, which sing the true Blade Gospel. The might of the sword used to kill must be used with justice and compassion, lest it be nothing but the very thing that causes the will of violence to turn. These revivalists are commonly known as graceless, while those faithful to the Ashen Star Blade Commission are those graced. If you choose to be a sword saint, your soul has been sharpened into a killing sword, your soul kills you. Once you achieve peace, you become worthless. Will you survive enlightenment? Hello viewers and welcome to a brand new episode of Trashtalk on Gubat Banwa, where I talk about the various disciplines you can play as within. And in today's episode, let's talk about the Sword Saint. You would think with a name like that, the Sword Saint would be a close quarter combatant like say, the Raider style, but nope, the Sword Saint is a sharpshooter. Let's take a look at their trait, Sword/Soul, which gives the Saint 6 health, 3 speed, 1 jump, and +2 to bravery, making them very fragile and slow, but this is for a good reason because the Sword Saint is basically a glass cannon, or glass sword. Every time you make an area attack, you gain a d4 Makabo's blade. You can spend the blade as defense dice against ranged attack or attack dice when making ranged attack, hitting or parrying on a 2+, you can have 6 of these blades at max. I think you can already do the math on how powerful this can be. That's just 75 chance to get an extra hit or parry whenever you feel like it. That's insane. And this trait basically encourages players to perform as many area attacks as possible, so when they unleash their ranged attack, something will perish on the spot. Alternatively, it can also make the Sword Saint much tougher than they first appear. It's just versatile. Now, let's take a look at the Sword Saint's inflict violence principle of slashing. First, cut, attack all fighters in line 4 with bravery. Second, slash, attack all fighters in line 3 with bravery, dazzling them, causing enemies to be more vulnerable to confusing attack and reducing their posture, which means your bravery attacks hit harder. And third, rip, attack a fighter in range 4 with bravery. If they're 3+ squares away, pull them 1 and their next defense roll suffers -1 dice. You should probably be able to see where this is going. You first slash at enemy fighters to dazzle them, then you cut them apart with your next 2 beats, giving you 3 blades in 1 riv, and then on your next riv, you can decide if you want to finish someone off with rip along with all 3 of the blades, and this is assuming there's only 1 target in the pattern. The combo might changes, but for the most part, you will be spamming area attack to charge up a powerful ranged attack or act as active defense. Either way, you gonna cut shit up a lot. Anyway, Let's continue with the Sword Saint's signature techniques. First, Makabo's cutting field / sword pure land. Attack a fighter in range 5 with the lower of your bravery or faith, ignoring combo breaker. On one hand, this attack ignore combo breaker so your damage won't be reduced. On the other hand, you will be rolling the lower of your attack prowess, so unless you have both prowesses at the same number, it might not matter if the technique cancels combo breaker at all. However, the Sword Saint is one of the few interesting disciplines with a focus on using both bravery and faith in their traits and/or techniques, which is probably why it's stated as a very complex discipline to play, so it might be a good idea to have good amount of faith too in your ability to cut, which you will be able to see as soon as you upgrade this technique for slashing lands. Attack all fighters in range 4 burst 1 with faith and then leave behind a burst 1 cutting field. All enemies in that field suffer +1 dice from all attacks from edged weapons, not melee attack, not ranged, not area, just anything from edged weapons. Presumably, this means anyone using blunt weapons or just things without sharp edge can't use this effect. On one hand, this fits with the lore behind Sword Saint. On the other hand, you kinda don't want this kind of gray area mechanic interaction in a fast-paced martial art tactical TTRPG because it can slow things down. On the third hand, if someone is spending time arguing that their metal club totally has a sharp edge for just 1 dice worth of extra damage, they are just being that guy. And also there's World of Slashing Blades, increase the area to range 5 burst 2 and also all enemies treat the field as dangerous terrain now for a very obvious and sharp reason. To summarize, this is partially an area denial technique, one that makes enemies want to run away from it and it's good for you to keep them there until they are no longer a problem. Second, Passion Flower Dance / Pure Blade Streak, attack a fighter in range 5 with faith. If the target is within range 3, then rush 1, if the target is adjacent, you may rush 1 before the attack. The rush here lets you do one thing, maneuver out of the way of an incoming fighter. As a sharpshooter, you are not good at close quarter battle at all, despite being something called Sword Saint. Rushing before you attack lets you avoid the penalty of using ranged attack at point blank range 2, which is nice. This technique can be upgraded to Gleaming Siva Sword, attack all fighters in a line 5 with faith and then teleport to a tile adjacent to the final tile in the line, essentially letting you move and attack at once, by 5 spaces too, faster than the Sword Saint can rush on their own. And Flensing Blade of Pa Mega Talim Talaman, increase the range to path 6, and the target on the 6th tile halves their posture on the next attack against them. The path 6 pattern gives you more flexibility on how to move it, letting you pick the target on the 6th tile more easily, and if you have an ally that loves bravery attack, they might be able to finish the poor guy in the next riv. Otherwise you can do it yourself with multiple Makabo's blade next turn. It said next attack after all, there's no time limit. After unlocking 2 of the Sword Saint's techniques, you unlock their Enlightenment, Sword Judas, for once per resound. When you are the target of an attack, you can just say and blow them wide open. If they're adjacent to you, push them 1 tile. This is an Enlightenment good for not just sharpshooter, but also just about any discipline expected to get attacked, which is all of them I guess. You can basically cancel out an incoming attack, take no damage or effect, and cause someone to be wide open, every resound. It's good. Third technique, Side Reel Rosary / Butala's Star, choose a tile in range 2, place an asterfix on it. Any enemy that starts their riv adjacent to the asterfix suffer 2 attack dice, slowed, and bleeding. There can only be 1 asterfix on the field at a time. You don't want enemy to get close to you, set this up and keep it between you and your targets, just bear in mind that enemy fighters can just destroy it. This technique can also be upgraded to Ashen Binding, bind 1 fighter in range 3 of the asterfix when you place it. If they end their riv not adjacent to the asterfix, they are pulled adjacent, which is one way to keep enemies from mauling you. And asterfiction, yes you can put 2 of them on field at once now, for even more area denial. Fourth, Keening Thunderhead Cut / Eviscerate God, spend 1 to 3 beats for increasingly powerful effect, take on sheath stance until you attack. While in the stance, you have extra posture, and you can now teleport when you rush, inflicting attack dice on all enemies in burst 2 of you before teleporting when you do. On your next riv, when you make an attack, you can instead, unsheath, attack all enemies in an increasingly larger blast with bravery plus faith plus even more numbers and blasting all enemies wide open, end your riv right afterward immediately. Ah yes, the anime technique, really reminding me of someone. I don't think I need to explain anything else on this, it's just a big finisher move that also end your riv right afterward, so spend your remaining beats first before using this technique to turn people into bodies. After unlocking 4 of the Sword Saint's technique, you get their Liberation, Sword Nirvana, on resound 3+, You can unsheath yourself and become the cutting thing. Spend 1 beat to enter Sword Nirvana for a short moment. While in Sword Nirvana, you have a cutting aura too. Any enemies leaving that area suffers 1 hit. All your attack can originate from the cutting aura instead, even melee. Finally, at the end of any resound, you can choose to condense your Sword Nirvana into a final Sword Himaya and bisect the battlefield horizontally. All elevations are removed. All enemies have their current HP halved, rounded down. I like the phrase unsheath yourself. It definitely gets the feeling of opening yourself for even more violence across, but in short, you can now cut people just by standing next to them, and you can cut people further than ever before. You are basically a goddamn razor-sharp sword tornado, and if you feel like it, you can end it all by just cutting literally everything, terrain included. This presumably ends the Sword Nirvana effect, so use it when you want to. And that's basically it on Sword Saint, Sword Soul Preacher that are unfortunately useless at anything but separating men from lives. I recommend getting some signature techniques from other discipline that focuses on bravery just to make more uses of your +2 bonus. Anyway, that's all for now, and I will see you all next time. Hello there, if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell button. If you really want to support my channel, you could visit my Patreon page, or buy me some coffee, links in the description. Anyway, have a nice day.